Is it possible for a small town to be uncopyable? I think the answer to that is now going to be yes, because I'm going to share with you an example of what I'm talking about and compare it with actually another small town to show you what I'm talking about. Hi, everybody. This is Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's Dad Marketing Gunslinger, and I welcome you back again for another weekly Uncopyable Business program. And our objective is to help you make more money, separate yourself from the competition, all that good stuff. Now, before I get started, very quickly, I do want to give a shout out to everybody down in Texas. I'm recording this when Hurricane Harvey is really blasting you guys hard. We're praying for you. Please stay safe. Okay, so let me bring this up. I want to talk about being uncopyable today and share with you an example of what I am talking about, what I'll call a tale of two cities. City number one happens to be actually my own city of Federal Way, Washington. And Federal Way is, if you see here, okay, here's Seattle up here. Federal in Tacoma is actually down here somewhere. Well, Federal Way is I think Federal Way is right in here. Actually, I know it's right in here. You know, it's where I live because our house is right in there somewhere. And so we're not too far from the water. Federal Way is sort of on the water. But Federal Way has been struggling with an identity crisis for many years because, first of all, it's named after a road. How many cities do you know they're named after roads? And in addition to that, Federal Way has Federal Way has a population of just under 100,000 people. But it has struggled over the years with attracting businesses, attracting families to move in, and it's having a hard time. And I want to compare that with a town called Casey, Illinois, which is the subject of a CBS Sunday Morning program segment recently. I want to talk about that. They are actually right about here on I-70. They're midway between Indianapolis and St. Louis, but you see, Champaign is up here. Oddly enough, it takes almost as much time to drive from Champaign to Casey as it does to drive from either St. Louis or Indianapolis. So it's not really an easy place to get to. Casey, as compared to Federal Way, is a much smaller town, under 3,000 people. And like many small towns in the USA, really struggling a lot, losing businesses, losing population, people moving out, small businesses having a difficult time making it, and either moving out or simply going out of business. And so I want to talk about what the two cities have done to try to amp up their brand, amp up their image, and attract new businesses, attract new families, things like that. Federal Way decided a number of years ago that it was going to host the World Championship of Sand Sculpting. Now, I want you to think about this here for a second, okay? Sand sculpting in Federal Way, Washington. If you remember when you looked at, we're south of Seattle, all right? Sand sculpting. When you think of sand sculpting, I don't know about you, I think of sand. Okay, this may be crazy. I might be wacko, but I think of sand. I think of sun. I think of the ocean. That's what I think of, right? Well, Federal Way, Washington, while we do have really nice summers, the sand sculpting championship was not held during our summers. It was held, I can't remember if it was in the spring or in the fall, but it was held in when it's gray around here quite a bit. Now, in addition to that, it's not held near a beach. We don't have any beaches near us. Certainly don't have any sandy beaches near us. So it was held in the empty parking lot of an abandoned or moved out Target store and Toys R Us store. So it's in a parking lot. Now, one thing that we do have in Federal Way that is a lot more common than maybe down in, say, San Diego, where there are sandy beaches and there is a lot of sun, is we do get rain. And when we get rain and there are sand sculptures, well, guess what? The rain damages the sculptures. So while we had it for a couple of years in a parking lot in Federal Way, I can't say that it was really a great, it wasn't a great match between Federal Way and that. And so since then, they've abandoned that idea, and the city leaders of Federal Way have decided instead to spend $33 million on a new performing arts and event center. $33 million is a pretty big risk for a town that's under 100,000 people, and so it remains to be seen whether something like this is ever going to pay off for us, and if it's going to even help bring in new business or anything. I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence in that. But what did Casey, Illinois do? Well, first of all, let's understand, they did something that was good enough for CBS Sunday Morning, the best show on television. If you are not watching or recording CBS Sunday Morning, you're really missing some great stories. But not only that, if you are an uncopyable follower, and if you are looking to steal genius, if you have learned the concept that I teach of stealing genius, then you are going to love CBS Sunday Morning, because I can tell you, over the years, I have had many, many great examples of stealing genius come from stories that I've seen on CBS Sunday Morning. So I strongly recommend that you watch this show, or at least record it and then watch it. But I'm going to share with you a segment that they had recently about Casey, Illinois, a town of less than 3,000 people, and what they did to separate themselves from all the other small towns basically in the U.S. and to start attracting new business and new people. So here's that segment right now. I'll be right back after it's over.
Dream big. That's what we're told. It's a lesson Connor Knighton tells us the folks in one small town have taken to heart.
The sign on the outskirts of Casey, Illinois, claims that 3,000 people live here. It's being generous. The latest estimates are actually closer to 2,700. But the population is about the only thing in Casey that's smaller than you'd expect it to be.
Oh gosh, it's hard to get the whole thing in. I feel like I gotta go low. Oh, there we go.
Casey is home to the world's largest rocking chair, and the world's largest pitchfork, and the world's largest golf tee. From the largest mailbox in the world, you can look out on a main street that could be in any American small town.
Now, you've lived here all your life?
All my life, yeah.
What was it like when you started to see some of these businesses close down?
It's heartbreaking because when you grow up in a small community, I mean, you know everybody, so you see a town just kind of slowly dying off.
The factories that once employed workers here have all closed or moved away. They packed up and left for bigger cities, leaving locals like Jim Bolin trying to figure out how to revive the tiny town he loves.
Small towns, we have to try to come up and think outside the box to get people to come to our small communities and shop.
It all started with this, the world's largest wind chime. Erected in 2011 to drive tourists to Jim's wife's cafe.
The wind chime, when I first built it, I said, that's my fishing lure. We cast it out to the interstate and tried to reel people into our little small town here to see what we got.
And are you catching fish?
Yes, we're catching fish.
Bolin's experiment was such a success, he went on a giant building spree. His family owns a pipeline business, so he had easy access to the raw materials.
Did you start to feel like a man on a mission?
Yeah. And because at this point, I'm thinking, okay, what can we do for our town? So I'm looking at different businesses and trying to find something that would correlate with their business.
So, free of charge, he gave the candy shop up the street a whimsical pair of the world's largest wooden shoes.
Do people come in just to see the shoes?
Yes, they come in to see the shoes, and then they find out it's in a candy store, so it helps me as well.
He built a set of knitting needles to attract visitors to Jeanette Husingay's yarn shop.
Is it a challenge to stay in business in a small town like this?
Very much, very much. If it were not for the gift of these knitting needles, I don't think I probably could have stayed.
Yes, believe it or not, there are people who come just to see the world's largest knitting needles.
The previous record holder of the knitting needles,
How was there a number 2? It just seems like number 2 would be a normal sized knitting needle. I'm shocked that there was another one you had to compete with.
yeah, I think it was in Sweden is where it was.
Bowen meticulously researches his creations and works with the Guinness World Record Organization to get them certified. Along the way, he's built plenty of large items around town that aren't necessarily record holders.
This isn't even world's largest. This is just big.
Yeah,
right here.
just a big pencil, yeah.
Just a big pencil.
Yeah.
The collection of giant objects has put Casey, halfway between St. Louis and Indianapolis, on the map.
What's been your favorite so far?
The rocking chair.
From the rocking chair, you can see the license plates of all the cars that stop by.
And so those folks just shouted they're from Pennsylvania?
Yeah,
Is
they're
that,
from Pennsylvania,
Do you
yeah.
get people from all over?
All over, California, Texas.
And all these cars have given lifelong resident Jimmy Wilson a sight he thought he'd never see.
The idea of a traffic jam in Casey, Illinois, is that a new concept?
Oh my gosh, yes it is. And we have road rage now because we have all these people coming to town and they're going so slow and gawking around that people get upset.
That's the kind of problem this town wants to have.
And I'm telling you, I can't believe it. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened here.
When the flag goes up on the giant mailbox, it means someone's dropped in another letter. A tourist, most likely, hoping to commemorate their trip.
Just to know that people are excited about having a postmark from Casey, Illinois on their mail, what's that feel like?
It's pretty cool to see kids and people get excited about something that they're doing in Casey. It's just, it's thrilling. It is. It's a special feeling, yeah.
Big dreams and a bigger heart.
They had one.
All in a small town.
Pretty cool, huh? Absolutely, really, really amazing story in my book, that the city of Casey, Illinois, has been able to connect themselves with the Guinness Book of World Records to create an attraction or a series of attractions in their town that has obviously worked. It's obviously worked. So which one do you think, let's either Federal Way or Casey, the first question is, which one do you think is going to have a better chance of long-term success? I have to go with Casey because it's really a terrific idea, terrific concept. I think it doesn't cost $33 million, and it's difficult to copy, which is another important thing. So compare it to the Performing Arts Center in Federal Way. I'm going to go with Casey, Illinois, every time. And what is going on there in Casey, Illinois that is helping to make that happen? Well, number one, let's think about this. Where did the idea come from? They didn't really get into that in the show, but I have to believe that something that gentleman, and I don't remember his name right now, but something that gentleman saw or heard or read or something like that stimulated his thinking into going, oh, large, big, world records. Is there some way that we can bring world records to Casey, Illinois? So somewhere along the line, he got an idea, but it wasn't from another small town, obviously. It was from somewhere else. It came from an alien example. And that's where the stealing genius concept, works best. And so I'm very sure that that's what happened with that. Second thing that he did was he sort of tested it first. I don't think necessarily that he saw going past the wind chimes for his wife's restaurant, but when he put the wind chimes up, and made them, a Guinness Book of World Record example of the world's largest wind chimes, it was successful in attracting people to his wife's restaurant. Now, being a lover of his small town, being a lover of where he grew up, he obviously then started to say, gee, can I do something like this that will help the town? And yep, he was able to stretch it out and take it around town and turn it into where the entire town was embraced by this concept of big things in a small town, right? And in addition to that, he looked for ways to create items like the giant pitchfork, the mailbox, the wooden shoes, the rocking chair, the knitting needles, to make some of these congruent and actually kind of attached to local businesses. So when he built the pitchfork was connected to a local restaurant, which happened to be in a barn, a renovated barn. So that pitchfork was congruent with that. The knitting needles, congruent with the yarn shop, whose owner admitted that if they didn't have those, that she probably would have been out of business, or she would have had to have moved, before this. So finding it to be congruent across the board with the city and making it easy to connect the dots there. Compare that to sand sculpting world championships in Federal Way, Washington. Very, very incongruent there. So that they also did a very smart thing, and they made this official, right? He said that he worked with the Guinness Book of World Records people so that he could identify something that he could build that could then be built to be the world's largest of that particular item, and that they would certify that. And so now, by having a collection of multiple examples of Guinness Book of World Records, that makes them extremely hard to copy from other cities. So like the rocking chair, if somebody else tries to build something bigger, well, then they have to connect with the Guinness people, and then they have to, and it would be silly. It's really something that I think, from a small town perspective, is uncopyable. I think it's just brilliant on their part. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to go there so fast, but so let me go back to this. So here's the thing about this, is that stealing genius, you can steal genius from anywhere and get ideas from anywhere. You might even have ideas from watching this about some type of connection with, say, the Guinness Book of World Records, because I don't think very many of you watching this are small towns, are mayors of small towns, or are general managers of small towns. I think most of you are corporations. And so maybe there's something there for you to think about. Or you think about something that's, not just the largest, but maybe the smallest, or the fastest, or the greenest, or something like that, that you could get some type of certification for. But anyway, the idea, again, is that when you've got a city like Casey, Illinois, that has clearly been able to identify itself as being different and in some way superior to what else is out there, they're going to be attracting people to that small town for a long time. Loved the road rage example of saying that, yep, we've made it now that we've got road rage. So pay attention to that. We'll have to see what happens to our $33 million Performing Arts Center, but that's going to take a while before we see the returns to that. So anyway, this is Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad and marketing gunslinger. Thanks again for joining me today, and I will see you again next week on Uncopyable Business. And until then, always remember, be uncopyable. See ya.